course, it is great speaking with you, and I hope you noticed something that I'm wearing right now.
Nice shirt. Nice. I like it. Looks good.
Yeah, because of course I was there as we speak last night for the taping of the new season, and I gotta say, man, I've watched the show for years. I'm one of the old school guys that watched it from day one.
Yeah.
I've always been in and out of the series, but the humor, of course, is hilarious, fantastic, original. Um, but I got to tell you, going to a taping is even funnier because, of course,
Yeah.
you feel the energy with the people around you, and in between the takes, jokes like you were making, and the rest of your fellow, can I say comedians, news people, whatever you want to say,
Cast. Yeah. Cast. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah.
cast. Oh my God, that's. I wish people could see and hear some of the stuff you guys were saying in between. Hilarious, so much fun, and thank you so much for the shirt. 30 years, my friend. Congratulations on being part of Canadian television CBC history.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a special night last night for sure. And I think it's almost like an athlete, when the big games, are coming up. And so last night felt like a big game for all of us, just not for the cast, but for the writers and the crew and everyone that, moved everything up from Halifax to Toronto and to have everybody in the building, people like yourself and the CBC brass. It was a big night. But it's the funny thing you said about the banter in between. It's like I want the live audience to have a good time. Like we know we're recording a TV show, but I want people in house to have a good time that night. So I always treat it like a live show. Like we're gonna give this audience that's in the building tonight a great time, right? So they leave and go, "Wow, that was fun." So I'm glad you had a good time. We love doing it.
Yeah, no, loved it. And like I said, love my T-shirt. Notice I'm going to be
Uh,
keep doing this over and over again because I've got one.
it
So,
looks great. It
uh,
looks great.
thanks, man. Yeah, and I made sure I wore it with my Blue Jay hat because as we
Oh,
speak, postseason going there. No, I'm not going to give away one of the jokes that was said about. I'll just say sports, and I'll leave it to that. But
okay, fair enough. No
what a
spoilers. No spoilers.
combination! This is my
Yeah.
comment. I won't spoil it. But yeah, for you being part of something like this, I mean, as a comedian, and originally you're from,
Newfoundland originally, yeah, Cornerbrook,
there you
Newfoundland.
go,
Yeah, yeah.
Newfoundland, where most of the original cast members were from. So how does it feel having that connection of comic history and, being able to bring it to the CBC, the best way to bring it to the CBC and the rest of Canada?
Yeah, it was a huge honor for me to join the cast. This is my sixth season, so I grew up watching 22 Minutes. Like in Newfoundland, it was almost a rite of passage. Like 22 Minutes is going to be on. It's CBC's on. You're watching what they're going to make fun of this week, and so it was. So for me to be behind those studio doors for the first time and be introduced as a cast member, I mean, it was just I was outside myself. Like I was kind of like, oh man, this is actually happening. And only so many people get to do it, right? Like there's only so many folks that can say,
Yeah.
you were a cast member on 22 Minutes. So for me, it's almost like being an astronaut. Like how many people get to go to space? So that's the way I look at it. And every day I show up, that thought is always in my head. Like this is a special thing we're part of, and hate to keep using sports analogies, but it's almost like being a part of a great franchise, right? Where you're like, wow, like I get to wear this jersey, and that's what it feels like every day being on 22.
What is it like for you and the rest of the cast members when you have to get together, write your skits, write your jokes, and watching what's going on not just in our, nation, but around the world too to create this great timely humor. And timely, I do believe, is very important.
Yeah, it's we're under the gun, because from the time we write the sketches on a Tuesday, we have a table read on Wednesday, and you're making these sketches the next day, like Thursday and Friday. Sets are built, locations are secured. We're going to go to a house. We're going to a restaurant, a barber shop. They're going to build a set in the studio. The idea itself didn't even exist 24 hours ago. And then suddenly the next day, you're in a submarine and you're like, someone built a submarine last night and like, all right, here's the periscope. And I'm like, this is crazy. So the speed at which we do it is really, really crazy and impressive in the sense of how quickly we write it, perform it, but also the set design, costumes, wardrobe, makeup. Everyone comes together in that 24, 40-hour period and makes magic happen. Like it still blows my mind every single week. So We try and be timely, see what's going on in the news. Can we find an angle that this is funny? Do people care about this? Is this enough? Would this be interesting enough for people to go, okay, yeah, that's something that's going on? It can't just be something that we find funny and no one else cares about. Otherwise, it's pointless. So, a lot of thought goes into it and a lot of work. And then, as you saw last night, we film a lot, and only 22 minutes actually is shown to the world afterwards. So and then we wrap it up and we do it again the next week. So it's like riding a rocket ship, you know.
It definitely is, and what a ride for us to be part of that too. But what is it also like for you too when, um, like, what would you? Let me jump back. What would you say was your favorite sketch that you did in your last 6 years? Let me go to that first.
Wow, there's been a lot of them. It's like there's certain moments I've had where I realize like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing is absolutely insane, you know. So we were doing the pot stoner sketch where Mark is a police officer and he's pulling over myself and Susan and giving us a pot sobriety test. And the sketch took off, like it went online and millions of views and all that stuff. But I remember on the day recording the first one, we're in the car and they're filling it up with smoke, and I can barely see Susan. She's right next to me, but there's so much smoke in the car I can't even see her. And they're yelling action, through a walkie-talkie in the car so we can hear it. And all of a sudden we're doing our thing. And we did a bunch of takes. And then when I got out of the car, all the smoke is billowing out. And there's an actual police officer standing there. He's got traffic blocked off for us so we can shoot this sketch in a residential neighborhood. And I've got this massive wig on. I just look, totally destroyed. And the police officer's just looking at me, just shaking his head like, what is happening? And then we just get in vans and we take off back to the studio to make a different sketch, right? Like that's done. And then we go again. And it was one of those moments where I went, this is pretty crazy. This as a job, this is a pretty cool thing to be doing. So that sketch in particular, and we did a bunch of those characters. That one's a pretty special one for me because it was just so much fun to do.
22, because of its 30 years, 3 decades, has these special eras during each section. And, and there are these iconic stories to talk about, even though you're using humor in it. I mean, we've used so many things, in talking about religion, politics, and all these different subjects. This time around, I love what you guys are doing because how you talk about what we've been dealing with for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And using that kind of humor towards it, and racism, how you are touching on that. What is it like? Because there's always been this talk for the last couple of years how cancel culture, you can't make jokes about these things. Somehow you guys, no matter what era it is, and I'm also looking at it now, you find not just funny points, but you also have life lessons to tell exact same time. It's like you can give that line, you're laughing, but you're learning.
Right. Yeah. I think for us, when you're a comedian in general, you realize that not everything, it's like being a chef or a cook. You realize like not everyone's going to love the food you make, but you're proud of it and you hope that it at least tastes good for enough people that you can have a career and a job. So I think we approach the comedy that way. We're definitely not trying to insult anybody or hurt anyone's feelings. We're just trying to have fun. Well, as you said, sometimes with a little bit of a message in there at the same time. And we take it very seriously. We're pretty critical of ourselves, like just, is this good enough? Is it too much of this or too much of that? Is that being respectful? Because, the news, as you know, can be pretty dark at times. And so there's lots of stuff we just were like, oh, we're not going to touch that because there's just no way to make it tastefully funny. It would just be people like, oh, well, we can't go there. So we realize that. We realize we have a bit of an obligation to our viewers as well, and kind of the kind of humor they want to see. So yeah, we're pretty critical of ourselves, but also realizing when we put stuff out in the world, we have no control over that. People are going to perceive that the way they want to do it. It's based on how they were brought up, their religion, their politics, all that filters through as they see this thing we just made, and they're going to take what they want out of it and see what they want to see, if that makes any sense. And so we realize that once we put it out in the world, boom, we're done with it, and we move on to the next thing. And you approach every single week like that.
Yeah, there's again. I don't want to give anything away from what I heard last night or saw last night, but the fact that you even gave little warnings of, oh, we're gonna get booed on this.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah,
I love that because even though people might be going, oh, there was still a reaction to it. And it was almost like a nudge, nudge. You know, he's right, right?
yeah,
Nudge, nudge kind of thing.
yeah,
What's
yeah.
it also like when you get to imitate famous people like some of our politicians and because
Oh, it's
that's
amazing.
got to be a blast to do. And I can only wonder what it must be like for them to
Yeah.
see themselves in that manner.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like, I walk in the studio some mornings and maybe Mark is shooting a sketch before I'm in, and I walk in the studio and I'll look up and he's like dressed like, one of the Fords, or he's like, all of a sudden he's Donald Trump, and I'm just watching the monitor like, that's going on behind this wall. And I'm just gonna go to my dressing room, and that's a total normal thing around here. And I did Barack once or twice, and so they're cutting up little tiny fine pieces of gray hair and putting it on my head and gluing it to my head. And I'm like, okay, this is a job, this is a thing in the world that we're doing, and it's just amazing. And our hair and makeup team, and the way the wardrobe people as well, the way they can just provide everything for you to have a certain look. I mean, they'll go to any lengths to make sure that we're doing it as exact and precise as we possibly can. And so they're so talented at what they do. So we just have to try and nail the character as best we can. But it's like it's like playing make believe every single day.
I'm just curious, have you ever heard back from anybody or has any of your castmates ever heard back from
Oh
any
yeah.
of
Yeah, over the years, once stuff goes online, like, someone's gonna see it, and sometimes people are like, "Great job," and sometimes we're like, "Really?" Like, so you just, you just, and we've already moved on to the next thing, and because that's the other thing with the internet, we might have filmed something, 2 months ago, and now the internet may just be getting a hold of it, and we're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot we even shot that." Like that feels like it was 2 years away, but it was literally 2 months ago, because we've done so much in the interim that you kind of forget that you even made those things. So it's yeah, it usually gets back to them in some way, shape, or form.
this is 30 years and correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand of course this season is celebrating those 30 years. We're going to should I say what we're going to see with am I giving anything away?
I don't know. Depends. What are you going to share? What are you going to share? Who knows?
Well, I could always edit this part out, but I was just wondering, we're going to see some of the past
Yeah,
former
no,
members.
definitely. And we're definitely honoring, the past and the history of 22 minutes, and former cast members and old sketches and that kind of stuff. So that's the thing about it. You look at the library of material and characters and the amount of talent that's gone through the doors at 22. Sometimes, when we were at our old studio, they had old photographs on the wall of all the old characters and stuff. So as you're walking to the studio, you'd see just the history of the place. So 30 years, yeah, we're trying to celebrate that. We're trying to celebrate all the great comedy and the talent that has passed through the doors. And you feel honored to be a part of it. You really do feel like you're a part of something far bigger than yourself. And even getting introduced last night, I was the first one out on the stage. And when I felt the roar of the crowd, I don't feel like it was for me. I feel like you're applauding 22. You're applauding this thing that has been going on for 3 decades. So that's the way it felt.
I can tell you this much. One of the reasons why, of course, I was applauding, of course, being a fan of it for so long, but I was also applauding a lot for you and, of course, another cast member because we saw the evolution of 22 as now we see true representation of
Mhm.
Canadians being shown on this great platform. And for somebody like me, being able to applaud both of you for that is something extremely important for the future as well.
Yeah, thanks so much. I feel like you know what it's like. You kind of live your life and you work hard and try and do the best you can, but you realize that, growing up, I'm sure you've had the same thoughts. You always wanted to see someone who looked like you doing something that you might want to do at some point. I remember watching National Hockey League games when I was a kid, and I remember seeing Grant Fjord take his mask off the first time, and I was like, there's a black guy in the NHL. It was just so powerful. Like, oh, that's for us too. Like
Yeah.
we could be in the NHL. But up to that point, you didn't see anyone who ever looked like you. It was just like, oh, that's for someone else. So I'd like to think now that when people turn on the show and they see myself and Abba and they're like, yeah, this show is for everybody. Anybody can aspire to be on the show, and this humor is for you as well. So I love the inclusivity of it, and I love the fact that there are younger generations watching the show who are like, "Oh man, hey, that guy looks like me, or that girl looks like me." I think that's a pretty cool thing.
So, what advice can you give that next generation that will be part of this platform? What advice can you give them as we speak? They're probably young kids watching this show, getting a
Right.
good laugh and going, "Man, I wish I can be on that." What advice can you give them?
I would always say to believe in yourself and your creativity. It's such a personal thing at times. We make this thing that we really, really believe in, and then the vulnerability part is sharing it to the world. That's really scary for a lot of people. And I think when you're on a show like ours, you develop a really tough skin because we have to get it. If you have an idea, you have to make it work past the producers first to see if they like it enough to get it made. So there's all these levels where someone may not really agree with your idea and it doesn't make it, but that's okay. It's not a personal attack. It's just it doesn't fit the show this week, or maybe it's got to be rewritten. So there's always rewrites, and you're fixing things. So it's about just creating and creating as much as you can, and not taking any of the failure personally. Because in entertainment and in comedy in particular, there's just so much failure and so much rejection, and people can get discouraged and go, "That's it, I'm out." But it's a marathon. That was the greatest advice someone gave me. It's like, man, this thing is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You got to think long haul, and you're going to get up every day and move your feet, and you go again and again. Just like athletes, you had a bad night last night. Doesn't matter tonight. We go again. So it's about short-term memory. We just go and we go. And I think if people do that, keep creating, and now you have social media platforms to create TikTok videos, and your phone can do so much. It's just keep creating, and believe in yourself, and then share your stuff with the world. That's what kids need to do, and that's what they're doing.
And last question, of course. What are you hoping the fans are going to get from this very, very, very special season? This season can only happen once the way it's happening,
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
next 35 or 40 or 45, it'll be different.
yeah,
But this
yeah.
one's yours, man. What are you hoping they get from this?
I really hope they just get a chance to be reflective, and look back on all the things that the show has done and the amazing people that have been on the show, the work that they've done, and celebrate it. And also to realize our crew and how much work they put into the show over 3 decades. I had a cool moment. I was at the Halifax airport a bunch of months ago, and I was flying in, and someone came up to me and they said, "Hey, I just want to say thanks um, for what you guys do on the show, because over the last 2 or 3 years, it's been really hard, and it's a bit of levity that we find every single Tuesday night. We love watching the show, and it's just that little thing that we can look forward to every single week, especially with all the darkness going on. And you kind of forget because you're in the bubble of the show and you just make it so quickly and you just keep moving on to the next thing. But to have someone come up to you and share that story, it meant a lot, because you realize, like, yeah, this goes out in the world and this affects people's lives and people look forward to it. So I think just honoring the impact that we've had on the country and on the news and the entertainment world in the country. And I think hopefully we'll do a good job this year of celebrating that.
Are you kidding? After what I saw yesterday, and like I said, I don't want to give anything away. I want people to see it just as fresh as I did.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
going to absolutely love it. I hope somebody goes out there and gets themselves some beef patties or something. You know what I mean? So leave it to that. Those are the
Right. That's right.
Easter eggs that we leave in there.
Little teasers.
Sir,
Yeah.
thank you so much for the interview. Thank you again for my shirt. But more importantly, thank you for representing Canadian humor, not just in this country, but around the world. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for your time. And the shirt looks good. You keep wearing it.
Damn right.
All right. Take care.